Okay. I think everyone signed in, so I'll just move on. Okay, so this week we're going to talk more about male reproductive system, because last week we focused on the female, but we'll review a little bit to kind of bring it all together. Come to my office hours tomorrow if you have last minute questions, and there's my email. Okay, so I want to start with a review of gametogenesis. So again, this is the formation of gametes or sex cells that are haploid, and haploid is just N versus 2N is diploid. So whenever you see an N, that means that that cell has 23 chromosomes. 2N means 46. So we're forming haploid gametes, and in females this is an egg, and in males this is the sperm. And then here's a review of mitosis versus meiosis. Mitosis is the formation of body cells. So you're going from one diploid parent cell to two diploid daughter cells. So all the cells are the same and they all have 46 chromosomes. Meiosis is instead the formation of sex cells or gametes like we just talked about. In meiosis, we start from one diploid parent cell and we end with 4 haploid gametes. So there are 2 divisions in meiosis that we're going to talk about. Meiosis 1 is when you go from one diploid cell to 2 haploid cells. So it's important to make the distinction that that's when we're going from diploid to haploid, is meiosis 1. Then in meiosis 2, we're just dividing each of the haploid cells into 2 more haploid gametes. So that's how you end with 4 haploid cells. And we're going to talk about gametogenesis now we'll talk about the general process first. So I'm going to draw the general process for both males and females, and then I'm going to draw spermatogenesis in males. So bring these over here. Here we go. So this is going to be called general gametogenesis. Or just gametogenesis. I'll draw it here. Okay, so we'll try to see if this is so you're going to start with a gametocyte, which is just kind of like a body, or just a cell. So this is your gametocyte. And this is 2N. So that means it's diploid, or it has 46 chromosomes. I made that really big. We're going to make it smaller. And then that goes through a mitotic division. So whenever we do mitosis, we end with diploid cells. So this is mitosis. And after mitosis, we form another identical gametocyte. I know it's not supposed to be smaller, I'm just like scaling so I can fit. And then a primary gametocyte. So whenever we do mitosis, we end with 2 identical daughter cells. in this case, this one's just called a primary gametocyte because it's going to keep dividing. This one is just kind of like what we started with, and it's nothing really happens to it, so that's why it's identical. It's just a normal gametocyte. This one's primary because it's important, almost. Like we're going to keep, it's going to divide into further divisions. That's it. So then the primary gametocyte goes through meiosis 1. Meiosis 1. And like we talked about a minute ago on the slides, meiosis 1 is when we go from diploid to haploid. So then we end with 2 secondary gametocytes that are both haploid, or N. So this is secondary gametocyte. And then each secondary gametocyte is going to go through meiosis 2, and that's when we form the 4 gamete cells. So then this is meiosis 2. And this is meiosis 2. So technically, these are all haploid. Technically, these are gametids, and then they're going to go through a maturation stage to form the gametes, which are then either sperm or egg, depending on if we're talking about male or female. So these are gametid. And then they mature. So this is maturation. Into gametes. Those are all haploids. So there it is on the slide. And then this process, the same thing, happens in males and females to form gametes, which is the sperm or egg. But it's just slightly different in males and females, and knowing those differences are important. But understanding the general process helps kind of understand the other two easier. Does this make sense? Pretty straightforward? Okay. So something to note before I move on is the primary gametocyte is diploid, the secondary gametocyte is haploid, and here meiosis 1 is when we go from diploid to haploid. I was going to also draw a flow chart of this, but I feel like it's pretty straightforward. I think you guys have it down. I think I'll draw spermatogenesis next, and then we can see how we feel about the flow chart. All right, so now the next one is going to be called spermatogenesis, which is just gametogenesis in males. So sperm. So again, we're starting with the gametocyte, but since we're in a male, it's now called a spermatogonia. And that's diploid. The spermatogonia divides by mitosis. To form another spermatogonia. And now we have something new. This is a type B spermatogonia. Type So this is different than general gametogenesis because normally we form the primary gametocyte right away from the gametocyte, but now we have a type B spermatogonia that goes through another round of mitosis. So then this is mitosis again. To form another type B spermatogonia. And now we formed the primary gametocyte. So this is primary, and since we're in a male, it's spermatocyte. So something to note in males is that we have 2 rounds of mitosis. In general gametogenesis and in females, there's only 1 round of mitosis. Then the primary spermatocyte goes through meiosis 1 into the secondary spermatocytes. And again, meiosis 1 is when we go from diploid to haploid, so these are both haploid. There's N. Then these go through meiosis 2 into the gametids. But since we're in a male, they're called spermatids. And then the spermatids mature in a process called spermiogenesis, which is very similar to spermatogenesis. So just keep those 2 separate. Spermatogenesis is the formation of sperm cells. Spermiogenesis is maturation of spermatids into sperm. So I'll write that down because hard to even hear the difference. So then these are like your sperm cells. And this is spermiogenesis. So there it is on the slide. How does that sit with you guys? Does that make sense? Okay. Going into a little more detail on this spermiogenesis process, we mature from the spermatids to the sperm or spermazoa cells. This is when we gain the midpiece, flagellum, and acrosome of the sperm cell. So if you look at the bottom, right here you can see the flagellum, midpiece, and then I'm assuming, oh yeah, acrosome is like the head part right there. Okay, and then I was going to quickly make a flow chart of this just so the terms are laid out in a more straightforward way. So I'll do that quickly. So instead of looking at it like this, basically we're starting with the spermatogonia. Which is 2N, or diploid, and then we're going through mitosis into a type B cell, which is 2N. The type B cell goes through mitosis again, so mitosis times 2, into a primary spermatocyte. Is diploid, and then that goes through meiosis 1, into the secondary spermatocyte, which is just N, and then we have meiosis 2, into the spermatid, and then that goes through spermiogenesis, into the sperm cell. And here we form 2 secondary spermatocytes and 4 spermatids and 4 sperm cells. So with 1 round of spermatogenesis, we form 4 sperm cells. So that's another thing to note. Forms 4 sperm cells with 1 round. So here's that little flow chart. And again, we have two mitotic divisions. Okay, so this is oogenesis. So now this is gametogenesis in females to form the egg cell. I wasn't going to draw this, but we do have time. Do you guys want me to do the same thing that I did with this for the female? Okay, I'll do that. So I'll leave it on the screen, I guess, just because it's already there. We can talk about the differences. I think I can fit it over there. All right, so now we're talking about oogenesis. So this is formation of an egg cell in a female. So consistent with colors. So here, the gametocyte is an oogonia. And that goes through mitosis. Into a primary gametocyte right away. Where's the pink? Oh. So it's a primary oocyte. So already we have a difference between oogenesis and spermatogenesis. Oogenesis, we just need one round of mitosis to form the primary gametocyte. In spermatogenesis, we have two. And then, just like general gametogenesis, that's just another oogonia. These are technically identical, just that one's not really relevant. And then the primary oocyte is going to go through meiosis 1. Into a secondary oocyte, which is haploid. And here we have another difference. We only form one secondary oocyte, and then the other cell that's formed is known as a polar body. So that just doesn't really do anything. It's kind of like irrelevant. We form two polar bodies in this process. So instead of forming two secondary oocytes, we form one in a polar body. You can see how that's different than spermatogenesis because we form two secondary spermatocytes. We only form one secondary oocyte. Then this goes through meiosis 2. To form one ootid and another polar body. maturation stuff. I don't have it on my diagram. So then what would happen during fertilization? The two gametes formed from oogenesis and spermatogenesis would then form the zygote. Does this process make sense too? Okay. Something else I want to know is that the primary oocyte is arrested in prophase 1 during fetal development. So this is arrested. And it's specifically at week 22. At puberty, selected primary oocytes continue on through this process. I'll say maturation continues. And then I wanted to run through the male hormonal regulation because we talked about this a lot with females last week. So in this case, we have GnRH, and then in the anterior pituitary gland, FSH is released from Sertoli cells, which stimulate spermatogenesis. And then activin increases, let's just say, production of FSH. Follistatin decreases production of activin, which acts as negative feedback. So when activin is released, we increase FSH. When follistatin is released, we decrease activin, which decreases FSH. And then LH is released by Leydig cells, which stimulate production of testosterone. And testosterone then stimulates production of secondary sex characteristics. Is everyone clear on the relationship between FSH, activin, and follistatin, or should we get into, do you want to draw that, or? It's pretty clear, okay. Okay, I have some top hat questions about this stuff. Let's see. Okay, we'll start right with the hormones. Follistatin directly decreases the production of what hormone, and what downstream effects does this, or what downstream hormone does this inhibit? Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, so if we go back to this slide, follistatin is the one that decreases production of activin, which then indirectly decreases production of FSH. So A should be the correct answer. Mitosis happens twice to form one egg cell. True or false? Okay, you guys got it. The correct answer is false. Mitosis happens twice in spermatogenesis and once in oogenesis. I could actually trick you on this one. What if I said mitosis happens twice to form 2 egg cells? Then that would be true, because we'd have to go through 2 rounds of oogenesis, which would make mitosis happen twice. Mitosis happens twice to form 1 sperm cell. So this should technically say 4 sperm cells. Yeah. But mitosis happens twice in 1 round of spermatogenesis. Meiosis happens twice in both oogenesis and spermatogenesis. Perfect. Meiosis 1 and 2. The result of mitosis of a diploid parent cell is what? Cool. That's good. Spermiogenesis is what? So spermiogenesis is maturation of the spermatid into the sperm. Spermatogenesis refers to the process of forming a sperm cell from a spermatogonia or a gametocyte. I'm trying to think of how you can remember the difference. So spermatogenesis has an A, so you have to do this whole process before you can go through spermiogenesis. It's kind of a stretch, but. The result of meiosis 1 and 2 of a diploid body cell is and this is in general. Yes, 4 haploid cells. Yeah. If I ask the result of oogenesis, you would say 1 haploid cell. Can you guys see this one? Yeah, okay. So this is from last week, but I just wanted to review a little bit of the female hormone stuff. The LH surge triggers what phase of the ovarian cycle? Do you guys remember?
Ovulation.
Yeah, perfect. And then this one, increasing GnRH from the hypothalamus has what effect on the hormone release from the anterior pituitary glands? Does anyone remember? Yes. So if you remember, FSH and GnRH are directly related. So when GnRH is released, FSH is also released. Just want to see what you guys thinking about female. And that's all I have. So we can end a little early. Feel free to stay and ask any questions you have about anything for the exam.